Good morning. I don't know if I'm supposed to be up here or down there, so I'm going to be up here, okay? It doesn't make me look taller. It makes me feel taller. This morning, I'm not going to read you scripture. Instead, I'm going to give you a little bit of a personal testimony. Most of you have already heard me speak, so you're familiar with my background, but I'm going to share a little bit more about myself every time that we meet each other. My name is Denise Skidmore, and I am a sinner that's been forgiven and washed and cleansed by the blood of my Savior, Jesus Christ. When I grew up, I always thought I'd be an English teacher, but my handwriting was never good enough, and there's a couple words that I have a hard time with. Two words, accept and accept. You know, like E-X-C-E-P-T and A-C-C-E-P-T. When to use those two words and how to use them have always been a challenge for me. And still to this day, when I type or write, I have to really think about the rules that apply to those two words, accept and accept. And I have to use them in a sentence. Not necessarily the sentence that I'm writing, but in another sentence to make sure I'm using the word properly. But as I've grown, I've learned that really the two words are very close to each other. If I accept something for the way it is, it's typically an exception for me. You see, I'm the kind of person that wants to have everything proven to me. I want you to prove it to me. Now, I'm not from Missouri, I'm from Nebraska, but I still want it proven to me. I'm not just going to believe it because you said it's the truth. And that used to drive my family crazy because they would tell me something and I was supposed to just accept it. Well, I don't just accept things like that. You're going to have to prove it to me. I'm the person that doesn't think that O.J. Simpson killed his wife. Okay? I'm sorry, I just don't think so. I want somebody to prove it to me. I was watching IDTV last night, and a very renowned case came on, and my husband, the police officer, was telling me all the details, and I said, I just don't believe it. What does it take for you, Denise? An exception. An exception. I want to see the exception in order to accept it. I want to see the proof that it really happened. So can you imagine how hard it was for me to give my life to Christ? Can you imagine what that was like? That leap of faith to go, okay, I'm buying it. I'm believing it now. I'm going to run with it. That didn't just happen for me the way it happens for others. Some of you went to church from the time you were little kids. Others came to it through years of Sunday school, and others came through it like I did late in life where you already have a past. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my past. I was raised in a middle-income family in a part of Omaha, Nebraska that was known for being socially and economically challenged. And it was in 1972, or 73, I was 12 years old, when a letter came in the mail that I was being bused to a different school zone. Now, back in that day, there wasn't a lot of rezoning that went on. They built the school before they built the houses, and you moved to that area because you wanted to go to that school. Well, I went to the same school that my parents went to. I was raised in the same neighborhood my parents were raised in, and that was important in our family. It had heritage. You were part of the Davis family. You were all raised in that neighborhood. We knew everybody in the neighborhood. It's different than it is today. So when the note came that I was being bused to a different school, my parents had a wicked fit. Where are you sending her? Why is she going there? I was being bused to an all-white, Jewish, high-class middle school because they thought I was black because of the neighborhood I lived in. I was the only white person on this bus, okay? I didn't care. They were all my friends anyway. It was great for me. But I got introduced to a new environment. First of all, I didn't know what a Jewish person was. I had no idea what I didn't know what to expect when I got there. I didn't know if it was going to be like Star Trek type people, if it was going to be, what does a Jewish person look like? Well, a Jewish person looked just like me. But they celebrated different holidays, and they had exceptions that I had to accept. See, I had to go to school on Jewish holidays, and they didn't. I wasn't sure what they were doing, but I knew they weren't at school with me because it was a Jewish holiday. And all of them lived in huge houses. One of my friends had an elevator in their house. Okay? I'm talking the wealthiest of the wealthy, and here I am from a low-income neighborhood. Now, sitting in the classroom, we all looked pretty much the same. Back then, there wasn't Tommy Hilfiger. Back then, there wasn't name brand clothes. Everybody just wore whatever clothes you got. It wasn't like that back then. Everybody just kind of fit in, and our parents made the difference in our lives. Well, I had my first boyfriend. His name was Hal Koch. It's spelled K-O-C-H, from the insurance, the Koch family, very, very wealthy. They had maids. They had a brick oven in their kitchen where bread was baked daily by servants. They had elevators. He was driven to school daily. And the first time I went to his house, when I walked out the door, his mother looked at me and said, "Just remember, you're not welcome here because you're not from this side of town." I didn't know what that meant. What do you mean I'm not from this side of town? I mean, I'm just a kid, right? Well, that stuck with me through my life. I wasn't good enough to even be in her home, let alone to hang around with her son. But we all went to school together. We all got in trouble together. Her son was the one. I had really long hair down to here. He would pull hairs out of my head and attach them to flies and fly them around the room. So the fly is attached to one of my hairs. The teacher knows I am somehow connected to this, okay, because it's my hair that's flying the flies around the room. But I wasn't good enough to hang around with him. Her comment helped create who I am. See, she was an exception to what I was accustomed to. My family was very accepting. I was not. I was the one who wanted everything proven to me. So I wanted her to prove to me why I wasn't good enough to hang around with her son. Because see, I knew who her son was. I knew what he was up to because we hung around together. We were all friends. He was shoplifting at the mall, and he was doing all the things that kids did back then. He was just like me, but I wasn't accepted in their circle of friends. I went back home a few years back when I was awarded an international award for the fuel program, and I looked up an old school teacher from that school to tell him how much I wanted to thank him for his acceptance of me in that school and the exceptions he made to make me feel comfortable. How he had gone far beyond making me feel comfortable among all of these wealthy children. And I told him what Mrs. Koch had said to me, and he was furious. And he said, "Let me tell you some of the stories about her son." And he went on to tell me some of the things that would have made me not accept his family back then. Because remember, I had to have it proven to me that you were different or exceptional or perfect or wonderful. And after it was all over, I thought, I really need to call her and thank her for that comment. Because what she said to me was not what I heard. I did not hear, "Denise, you're never going to be accepted here." I heard, "You have to try harder." Now, going back to Christianity, as a Christian, I didn't just accept what everybody was telling me. I read the stories and the whole thing of Jonah being inside of a whale. Really? I didn't think I was buying that. The earth flooded and 2 of every animal were put on a boat. That would have to be a lot bigger than what they said it was. What animals exactly were in there and how high was it? And, you know, I just could not just jump into faith. But I had to make an exception to accept it. I had to say, well, you're going to get a chance to talk to Jesus, but it's going to be a while. And if you live your life not believing, that conversation is going to be a lot more difficult than if you step out in faith now. One of the important things for me in my Christian faith has been to never forget who I am and to learn to accept others. I have stood in churches and preached where I'm the only white person, just like I was on that bus many years ago. I wasn't uncomfortable. I was the exception. I was the one who stood out like a sore thumb. And yet the people in the congregation wanted to hear what I had to say because they accepted me as a Christian. I think it's very important as far as acceptance that we look beyond what we see and we learn to accept people. I'm going to show you something, and this is who I really am. Now, a lot of people, they say, oh, that's the fuel lady, she's at church, she does this, she's involved in the community, but you don't really know who I am and what I enjoy. Now, this is going to make a lot of noise while I take this off, and I promise I have clothes on under here. What I look like on a regular day at home, okay? The Sons of Anarchy is my favorite TV show. Now, if you haven't watched it, it's Mr. Hottie, Jax Teller, young enough to be my son, but he's this rough and tumble, motorcycle riding, runs a motorcycle club. Now, those of you who know me know that my brothers are Hell's Angels. He lives the life of my brothers on television. But he's not at all what we think he is. If you've ever watched the show, he's this rough and tumble Harley riding guy, leathers, sleeping with girls he shouldn't sleep with. But he's a British man with a British accent, and you could never tell it on the TV show. He's a Christian who believes that he makes a difference in the world with everything that he does. But you'd never tell that on the TV show unless you take the time and make it an exception to get to know who this man is off the television screen. Then you might not ever accept him for who he really is. You see, a lot of people would see this shirt and go, oh, that's great as a Christian to be up on the... No. You have to look beyond the shirt. You have to look beyond the Tommy Hilfiger sweater. You have to look beyond the high heels and the tight jeans. You have to look beyond, by the way, these are size 16, I'll just let you know. They're not skinny jeans. But, and they might be 18 tomorrow, I'm not sure, it depends on what I have for dinner tonight. But you have to go beyond what you see. You have to go beyond what you think. You have to make the exception. I was speaking with a couple here earlier, telling them about a friend of mine who, if you look at her out here, she's going to come to church dressed appropriately. When she's out in public, she's always dressed appropriately. But she has piercings throughout her body where she hangs herself from chains. Why? Why, Vicki? Why do you do that? What does that do for you, Vic? I had to make the exception. I have to accept her for who she is. She's never harmed me in any way. She's never harmed anyone that I know of. But underneath there's pain and sorrow and hurt that nobody knows about. She told me she'll never have a child because she doesn't want her doctor to see her like that. You see, there's pain and there's hurt and there's sorrow inside of every one of us. We don't often talk about it. People say, oh, don't air your dirty laundry. Well, in order for you to understand that inside of me is still a little girl raised in Omaha, Nebraska, who had somebody tell her that she doesn't belong there, somebody who did drugs and drank and did all the horrible things that I've already told you about in the past, I'm still in there. But I had to make an exception and go beyond my beliefs and my thoughts of myself and accept what Christ gave me. the forgiveness and love. I had to be able to get past all that in order to become the Christian that I am today. I don't ask people to accept me. I ask you to make exceptions for yourself and for others so that you're able to receive the gifts that Christ gives freely. If you don't look beyond that, you'll never be able to receive the free gifts. You'll forever beat yourself up. You'll forever look at yourself as, I'm a size 16 and 1% of the population is a size 0 and I'm not good enough for that. I don't want to be that. They are the exception. I don't want to be like anybody but me. And I want to be able to accept you all as Christians in the same light that Christ did. And that's looking at you individually, making exceptions for all of you, and loving you the way that Christ loves you. And that's no judgments. No concerns for what you've done. I owe you nothing, you owe me nothing. However, I will hold myself accountable for your actions, because if I see you doing something that's going to harm you or harm me, I'm going to come to you and say, I want to know what's going on. This is an exception. I have accepted you as my church family, and I'm responsible for you as much as you're responsible for me. So if you leave here with nothing else today, then Jax Teller is on TV, Fox 30. Check it out. He really is an awesome guy in his personal life. And if you watch him on YouTube, you would never recognize him on television. He doesn't look like this. He doesn't act like this. But neither do I. So thanks. Have a great day.